Despite the lack of water here in Phoenix, Arizona, it feels like you could go surfing today. Welcome back to Onward to Victory for our first episode in quite some time. It's been a couple of weeks since the last time we've had an Onward to Victory episode. It's a beautiful day here in Phoenix, Arizona. 92 degrees, scorching hot. You love to see it. But we're back for Onward to Victory in the studio. I'm Colgin Hirschel, Rhiannon Boesl, Taylor Gautney, and we have a packed show, a couple of big sports coming to a close, a couple of big sports playing U of A. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so ASU just came out, their softball team just came out with a win against U of A. They did lose the first two games in that series, but U of A is ranked number 10 right now. So that was a pretty good win for ASU. It was a close game. It was 3-2, but Ashley Maya, their freshman outfielder, she had a 2-run home run, which really sealed the deal for ASU. I think this is a really big step for them, especially since their first two games against them, they had a pretty big deficit in the score. So being able, even though it was a closer game this time, being able to take that win was definitely really good.
Yeah, and you look at the Sun Devil season so far, they're sitting unranked, or they just got ranked in, pretty sure the USA softball rankings, number 23. 23-10 on the season. They started out a little slow, but in Big 12 play, they've really stepped it up. And you have the number 10 team visiting. You lose the first two, and then you have only 4 hits in the game. Mejia with the home run, and then Tiari Ho-Ching with the double. But it was really about the pitching from Kenzie Brown. She's been stellar all season. She pitched 6 innings, giving up just 1 run, and she struck out 8 batters. Her season ERA is 0.98. That's top 10 in the country. And we actually saw her break the strikeout record in a single game a few games ago, I'm pretty sure against BYU in one of those 3 games. So this ASU softball team's slowly on the rise, and they have a lot of weapons to, make some noise this late season push.
Yeah, you mentioned Kenzie Brown. Back in, it was the first week of March, she broke that record. I think it was 18 that she got struck out in 7 innings. I called the game later that week on Saturday. They won 5-4 in extras, which was an incredible game. Had a walk-off video review, which was very interesting to hear. But this weekend against Arizona, it was just 2 unfortunate games. I mean, you score 2 runs through your first 2 games, which obviously it's a number 10 team in Arizona, but coming into it, Arizona State was the number 23 team in the country. And then they dropped those 2 games pretty heavily, and I'm sure they're going to fall out of those rankings this weekend, or this coming week. But they bounced back. They won a big game on Sunday against Arizona, and it hopefully will, for the Sun Devils, set up a big stretch of games where they have a couple of tough teams coming up.
Yeah, going into Big 12 games, it's definitely going to be tough, but I feel like this Sun Devil team, Coach Bartlett was discussing just keeping it simple and not getting chaotic is what they really need to focus on. And I think if they can just get that down, they should be great this weekend going against Iowa. Iowa State has 14 wins, and right now ASU sitting at 23 wins. So I think that this weekend will be really good, and we'll set them up for the other games like Kansas. And yeah.
Yeah, and really this team is so well-rounded. You look at 5 batters above a 300 batting average in Ho-Ching, Swan, Hall, Wendell, and Murphy. And you even look at the bench, the people that don't start as much anymore, Nahonda Lewis, Yaya Acuna, Aiden Allen, Grace Molitor, Molitor, a freshman with a lot of potential. But Allen and Acuna last year were every game starters, and they're sitting on the bench. So you're seeing the recruiting kind of come into fruition and everything coming together for this team. And like I said earlier, this team has all the pieces to really make a run.
Yeah, and they dropped those games not because that they weren't a good enough team. It's just this Arizona team is really good. I mean, they are playing a team with 4 of the top 6 players in OPS in the Big 12 in Arizona. And they have 2 of the top the top 3 home run leaders in the Big 12 as well. So they kind of just swing the bat really well, and they know how to get big runs when they need it. But in that second game, or the third game, they definitely shut them down pretty well, only allowing 2 runs and getting the win in a big game where they could have started to falter a little bit, which would have been their fifth loss in their last 7 games.
Yeah, and really those first 2 games, they struggled to get the bats going. Of course, you talk about Arizona. They have some of the best pitchers in the Big 12 in the circle. But, yeah, this ASU team, they, lit it up in the 3rd game. They're 4 wins over ranked teams so far. That's double of what it had last season. They only had 2 last year. And that upset of number 10 Arizona is actually the highest ranked win ASU has had since they beat Washington last season. And this ASU team, along with Arizona, is making some noise in national rankings. They're ranked 44th in the country in batting average. They're also 44th in RBIs, so kind of sitting middle of the pack, but they can really step up.
I mean, it's like beating a broken drum. Like, an Arizona State team surprising people and getting ranked. Like, how many times have we seen that this year? I mean, football, basketball was almost in consideration with that for a little bit at the beginning of the year, going 9-2 in non-con. Hockey, the baseball team is starting to make a little bit of noise in their first season in the Big 12 as well. But it's just this first year for Arizona State in Big 12 play, and CHC for hockey, whole different story. But we actually will get to that a little bit later on in the show. We'll close out the show with that. But it's been a successful year for the Sun Devils, getting repetition, getting reps at being a good team in these sports, and knowing how to play with a lead and knowing how to play with not being the underdog in every game.
Yeah, and like having all that attention and all that pressure, being able to adjust to that and play well and dominate with all of that for the first time.
Yeah, and you talk about adjusting to pressure. Look at Ashley Mejia, the girl that had the go-ahead home run. That's her 6th time getting a go-ahead or tying home run this season. And, as a freshman, that's almost unheard of. Of course, in high school, she was a 4-year starter. She was named her team MVP 3 times. But really stepping up to the plate, literally, for these Sun Devils, she's really making a difference.
Yeah, and another player stepping up to the plate for the Sun Devils, not in softball, but over on the other diamond down at Phoenix Municipal, is Josiah Cromwick, who's a grad student catcher who redshirted last season after coming over from Oregon, but is now seemingly the number 1 catcher and filling big shoes for Ryan Campos, who left a few years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like catchers don't get the recognition that they deserve, and they definitely have a big role in, just controlling the pace of the game and stuff. And the way that he's stepping into this new team and just dominating is absolutely incredible. And the way that the team can adjust and connect well with him is incredible.
Yeah, and kind of me and Colgin are around the team every now and then. Kind of when him and Brody Briggs split, you think that this guy Cromwick, as a graduate, would kind of be disappointed that he's sharing time with a guy way younger than him. But he keeps his head up, and going against Kansas, a ranked Kansas team, coming in, he had 2 home runs in the first game and 4 at-bats, 3 RBIs, 2 hits. He got on base in every single at-bat that he had. Of course, in that series, he only got 1 more hit, but Josiah Cromwick really has been that kind of glue guy for the Sun Devil team to kind of make them well-rounded. You have the great outfield, you have the great infield, but you always, like Rhiannon said, you always have to have a great catcher. And Cromwick has really done that, not even on the offensive side, but also the defensive side.
Yeah, and just taking a look at his profile, he set a career high in home runs scored and then just runs scored against Kansas, as well as putouts, which I find kind of interesting that he set a career high last weekend against Kansas in that category. For anyone who doesn't know, putouts is when you make a catch, pretty much. So it's interesting to see that he's been able to produce well on the offensive side of things. He's got the 8 home runs on the season, which is 4th in the Big 12, top 100 in the nation. Then he's also able to contribute well on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Yeah, and at Oregon, he was really the star behind the plate, but when he transferred here last season as a redshirt junior, he was really just a depth player. He only made 6 starts, 2 doubles on the season, but out of high school, this guy was really a stud. He was the number 6 overall in the state of Nevada, the number 1 catcher, and then nationally he was the 41st ranked catcher. And a lot of people are talking about him, being kind of a late round MLB pick, trying to make a difference in the MLB, in the minors and everything. But yeah, Josiah Cromwick, he's been amazing so far in his past few games. He's just heating up, and really with this baseball team, with the upcoming schedule, you have to have that guy behind the plate that you can count on.
Yeah, you mentioned his draft stock. Like, the thing with the MLB and these minor league teams is that there's so many opportunities for players to try and prove themselves. That's why it's such a popular sport for people to just pick up and attempt to play. There's how many rounds in the draft? 30, 40?
Yeah, I think like 40.
Something like that. Like, it's kind of insane how many
There's 20
players. 20? Okay, so we were a little bit off. But there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of players that get selected. That's quick math, 600 players, more 640, something like that, every single draft. So it's a lot of opportunities, a lot of players, just a lot of eyes watching other people just play. And for Cromwell, if he gets selected, he'll probably be, what, AA, AAA?
Probably single A, yeah.
So he'll have to work his way up pretty fast, considering he's already 22, 23, because he's a grad student. But it's an opportunity for him to prove himself and also just add another list of Arizona State Sun Devils selected in the draft and to attempt to make it to the MLB.
Yeah, and you look at the team as a whole, that had the highest of highs, scoring 26 and 12 runs at TCU, coming back playing a USC team that's not as good as they probably should be, 6-3, and then you come out, win against the number 22 ranked team 9-2. You drop the second one, and then you walk off with New Contrades on Sunday. You have a lot of momentum. This team plays at UNLV, a non-Big 12 game. And then you have Utah, Arizona. Cal State Fullerton is an underrated non-conference opponent. It really just goes up from here. And shout out to New Contrades, of course, that walk-off homer against Kansas on Sunday. This weekend, the crowds were insane. 18,528 fans, and all three different fans in all three games. So you have the regulars that come to almost every game. But, yeah, this team is on the rise. Bloomquist said it. He said the fans, they add a lot of energy. Our guys get an extra gear of motivation. So if you're listening to this and you love some college baseball, you really got to get out to Phoenix Municipal Stadium. It's a great sight to see.
Yeah, and they haven't been ranked just yet, but I have a feeling that we'll start to see them compile some votes as we continue to progress in this season. But for now, we'll head to a break, our first one on Onward to Victory. We'll be back after 1901 by Phoenix. Welcome back to Onward to Victory here on this beautiful Monday afternoon. My name is Colgin Hirschel. Alongside me is Rhiannon Boesl and Taylor Gautney. Next up on the show, we are talking about an AZ prospect in Kylie Barr out of Xavier Prep Beach Volleyball.
So I just want to shout out her real quick because she's a junior. She's 5'6". Her vertical, 29 inches.
Jeez.
Are you serious? That's incredible. She is currently committed to Oregon. And, yeah, just beach volleyball impresses me so much. It's so fun to watch, but she just kills it. Right now, she's a defender, so she's usually in the back. But she has 76 digs this year, averaging 3.5 digs per set. She has 33 kills, 34 aces, and 81 assists. She plays for Stealth Beach Volleyball, which is an incredible club, and just the way that she's able to dominate is just absolutely incredible. And we've mentioned before, volleyball is a pretty big sport in Arizona, and I also think beach has been getting bigger. More schools are adding it to their school team because typically it's more just indoor. But, yeah, so she's currently playing for Xavier Prep, which is a great school. Her record right now is 6-1. She just defeated Highland High School in 3 sets. But, yeah, her record is great. She typically sweeps, and it's going to be really exciting to see what she can add to Oregon.
Yeah, and you talk about how much of a stud she is. She sits number 2 nationally for 83 kills. She sits number 4 nationally for 81 assists. Being nationally ranked in beach volleyball there's a lot of high school beach volleyball players. It's very hard to do, so shows how talented she is. And, yeah, you look at her team, Xavier College Prep, number 59 national rank, number 8 Arizona rank. Arizona, of course, dominates beach volleyball. It's Arizona and California that are the two main states. And you talk about Oregon getting her. They really need her so far. 3-8 on the season, 0-4. They're on an 8-game losing streak. Their schedule once again is very difficult. They lost actually to ASU in Tucson, but yeah, the game of beach volleyball is growing. It's growing rapidly, and I think we're doing a lot of things, giving this girl some recognition because maybe not in the mainstream media, but of course shouting her out here.
Yeah, and shouts out Treff and Rexius for the commit to Oregon. This is the second player who we've talked about who was at Oregon, obviously Cromwell before, but unintentionally a lot of Oregon Ducks in this episode. But
and kind of how you were mentioning earlier, Taylor, beach volleyball isn't talked about enough, and it is so hard. The way that she can be that highly ranked in kills and as a defender is just absolutely incredible, and I just can't get over her vertical and running, having that endurance, having that the skill and the strategic ability to dominate the whole court. And this year at Xavier Prep, she's partnered with Emma Robescu, and they've been doing pretty good together. But yeah, it's just really cool to see how she can just dominate and really just navigate this team well.
Yeah, so as we shift away from the beach, we'll go to the pond, over to the hockey team who, unfortunately for Sun Devil fans, fell this weekend to Denver 4-2 in the NCHC quarterfinals, or the semifinals rather. Ended their season last weekend. It was a very productive and successful season for the Sun Devils, I'll say. Got a lot of more eyes looked on them. Definitely have a lot of decent prospects coming in to the club next year, but just a 4-2 loss on Friday to Denver, who ended up losing in overtime to Western Michigan, and who will play. Both teams will play in the NCAA tournament, but Sun Devils will not be advancing to that.
It's sad, but also they have, I think, like you said, it was just a really eye-opening experience for this team. And I think since they have such a young team, they welcomed in a bunch of transfers this year. To see how far they made it and, falling short to Denver, they have really high hopes coming in for next season. And this was their first year in the new conference. So I think this gives not only fans, but the team itself just a lot of momentum. And the way that they just fell short at this late in the season, I think that just puts a fire under them to come back even harder next year.
Yeah, and of course, you look at the emotional, season coming to a close, historic season. They gave it their all, like they said. A historic season comes to a close. This team, had a lot of bright pieces. You look at all the players that have just been amazing. Ryan Kerwan is one. Of course, he cut the deficit at the half, but of course they couldn't capitalize on that opportunity, losing 4-2. Yeah, there's a lot to look at with this team. I haven't been around the team as much. I haven't been following them as much, but, you hear the buzz. Like Colgin said earlier in the show, there's a lot of sports that are on the rise, and hockey is definitely one. And you really heard all about it from everyone, and if you didn't go to a game this season, you really missed out.
And it's really great timing since the Coyotes left. Arizona's getting their hockey in, and yeah, and I think, and it was evident too, a lot of people showed out to games, and like you said, it was definitely something to see, and I'm just excited for next year.
Yeah, and you mentioned the transfers a little bit earlier. They have had most of their success predominantly grown around the transfers. I mean, Ryan Kerwin, 26 goals. He's still the fourth highest goal scorer in the entire nation, tied with Isaac Howard of Michigan State. But he came over from Penn State. He was looking to fill big shoes on the power play, to fill over for Matthew Copperwood, who left last year. And he did everything that they asked for and more. And then Artem Schlein as well, putting up multiple points. He won the 3 Stars Award for the NCHC, which is just one of the better players in the NCHC. Starting goalie Luke Pavicic, who took over for Gibson Homer, who not too many people thought would lose that starting job. But now that Pavicic is going to be graduating after this year, I think Gibson Homer will most likely fall back into place in that starting role.
So is it like officially like over? Like there's no way they can make the NCAA tournament?
Yes. So the tournament was just announced yesterday, I believe. Quickly looking up the bracket. So the teams that made it from the NCHC, Western Michigan at the 4 spot, surprisingly the lowest ranked conference champion in this poll. But they put Boston College at 1, Michigan State at 2, Maine at 3, who has shocked a lot of people this year, and Western Michigan at 4. They'll play Minnesota State in the first round. Denver has a matchup with Providence, who I think Denver will probably win that. ASU played Providence a little bit earlier in the year, and they struggled heavily. But I think if they had a rematch, they would have done a lot better. But it'll be interesting to see just how this tournament plays out, at least for Arizona State's perspective, because they see Denver and Western Michigan fall early, which I don't think we will. I think there's actually an opportunity. There's a decent chance they'll potentially meet up in the semis. The only teams that they'd really have to get through is either Minnesota or Boston College. But it'll be interesting for Arizona State just to see how these teams, who they honestly played really well against Denver in the regular season. They were one of the teams that beat them multiple times, and they beat Western Michigan for the first time in regular season. So successful season for the Sun Devils, but it'll be interesting to see just how these other teams compete.
Yeah, we've been talking about hockey all season. You know, one of our first episodes in October, we talked about how they lost one. They split against Air Force.
Which, going back, is like unbelievably insane that they split against Air Force.
And then losing to Michigan, and then getting the shootout win against Michigan, and then losing both at Providence. And I remember we were all kind of down on the team. We were like, new conference might not have been the best move. You know, you're playing harder competition, but they proved everyone wrong. They got the 2 seed in the NCHC. They were this close to making the NCAA, tournament, but
and to think they had so many injuries throughout this year. So if they can come back healthy next year after having this chemistry with their new players and having a better understanding of what this conference brings, like, I think it's going to be a really great season. I mean, this was a really great season, but I think next year is going to be really cool.
Oh, yeah. Like, it by no means was this a bad season for the Sun Devils. Their first half was just riddled with injury. They didn't play a single game this entire season without someone injured. Just unbelievably brutal injury bug luck. They finished 16th in the pairwise rankings, which is calculated mathematical formula, whole thing. They finished 15th in the USCHO polls, which is more so just a visually attractive poll. Nobody uses that for any sort of tournaments, but they had a successful season. Next year, when they have guys like Landon Halfley coming in, who is on the U17 National Development Program, he'll be a star for this team, assuming that he plays year one. The future's looking bright for the Sun Devils. For sure, they have a lot of potential to improve this year, and just this offseason, we'll see what Greg Powers can cook up with transfers.
So what is your prediction? Who's going to take home the big W?
Let's take a look. I really think Michigan State is a heater team. They definitely have the tools to do it. They have pretty much good players at every position. Boston College too, which is obviously cliche because they're 1 and 2. But I think a surprising team that could come out and surprise some teams is Penn State. They have a matchup with Maine. They've beaten Michigan State, and they beat Michigan as well. So they've been hot to end the season. So
just before you sign off, I wanted to highlight the 2 basketball teams. ASU, of course, didn't make March Madness, didn't make the MIT, but got invited to the College Basketball Crown, a brand new tournament. They're playing Nebraska in Las Vegas Thursday. And then the women's basketball team just got their coach of the future. Everyone's really excited about this hire. Molly Miller from GCU, leading GCU to the women's March Madness, and then getting the offer to come over to ASU. Just wanted to shout her out real quick because, it's been great for the community. She went to the softball game. Everyone, she was loving everyone. She loves already being a Sun Devil. So we can expect a lot for this women's basketball team coming up.
So as the last seasons start to close out, we'll close out Onward to Victory for this Monday afternoon. My name is Colgin Hirschel.
I'm Rhiannon Boesl.
And I'm Taylor Gautney.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.